Alright guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video and another ESBR run. We're taking the new SSJ Vegeta and Goku in here, or Goku and Vegeta, technically the right way around. And we're going to see how they do. I have attempted using them in Red Zone against the Mega Shenron. However, that didn't go so well. Like, that really did not go well whatsoever. So, I'm doing this as an alternative. Like, they at 55% specifically, even though that's kind of the least of their problems. But them at 55%, how much defense do they have? Not even 120k. But them at 55%, but them defensively more than anything else, has been a major, it's made a major struggle using them in Red Zone. I do think with at least a dupe, but with some dupes in them, because they do have an extra... Do I want to use an item here, actually? I'll use an Icarus, just to be careful. Just to be extra safe, I'll use an Icarus. But yeah, them at 55% has been a little bit of a struggle. I do think with at least a dupe, I'm glad I used the Icarus now, even though he does have guard. Them with at least a dupe would definitely make them a little bit more reliable. Definitely more consistent, considering... You know, they do have that built-in additional in those 3 times, which is great. The 50% chance for an additional, also great. But when it comes to harder content like Red Zone, where bosses can do so much damage, even on basic, especially deep in, if that additional doesn't come off as a super attack, raising their defense by 30% once, even... This is probably actually going to do some damage, even with the Icarus. Actually done 43, so at least we've kind of found their level where they're absolutely amazing, which is ESBR. But yeah, if that additional super does not come off, even with 40% damage reduction, they can still take quite a lot of damage, which in Red Zone, again, because of how much damage bosses can do, it's just not enough. It's just literally not enough. It's like, it's not even like I need them to be gods. Like, I don't need them to tank everything for nothing. Like, that's not what I'm saying. But all in all, it's just not enough. Like, it's just not up to standard of what DOKKANFEST, especially LR DOKKANFEST, are tanking for and how good they are defensively in Red Zone. Like, even some of the better units in the game, but the LR DOKKANFEST, they're not tanking everything for literally nothing, and I don't expect them to. But, you know, they're not an absolute risk to run in Red Zone, whereas these guys are. And as I said, especially without that, like, a dupe in them, so you have an extra chance at an additional, make sure you raise your defense, you know, twice, and, you know, ideally a 3rd time to make sure they're actually defensively solid for that turn. As I said, it does make them kind of a struggle to use. But nice to know in ESBR, they tank actually relatively well with an item active. Because during the Red Zone runs I've been trying to do, watching them take like 300k on a super, even with 40% damage reduction, no item though, but 40% damage reduction and 1 super of raising their attack and defense by 30%, they still take 300k against Omega Shenron's first phase, which I would, when I finally beat a Red Zone run with them actually kind of doing something, because the last one I did I actually beat, but they were kind of nowhere to be seen, I will include the clip of where they got absolutely clapped. Like, their cheeks got 100% jiggled. Like, literally got jiggled. So, you know, as I said, in terms of how good they are there, it's not consistent enough. It's just not consistent enough in the slightest. So at least here, they're tanking far better, which I definitely expect. We do have them set up on their ideal rotation, which is the Bird Coup in slot 1, with his guard, of course. Won't be able to stack up too much, but that doesn't matter. Any extra defense is nice, again, especially coupled with the guard, and then combined with the fact, you know, that he's going to take a hit. A little bit extra damage, but still not too much. Then he's got the additional 59% defense after that, and then he's tanking exactly the way you want him to. We also have that revive as well, which, of course, we do want to come off, mainly so we can guard at all times and not have to worry about our HP. In fact, I'm going to Usher here, because my I need SSJ Vegeta here. So since we don't have to worry about stunning, I might as well just super attack Gohan. We'll leave the Strength Goku Vegeta here for the time being, because they do have 2 dupes, whereas these guys only have 55% in the dupe system. But yeah, they're not defensively consistent enough in red zone. As I said, if you have dupes in them, you definitely have to be a little less, reliant on RNG. I mean, technically it's still RNG related. As I said, you have that high chance to launch an additional super anyway with the built-in additional that's guaranteed. You have another additional chance to come off from the dupe system, so if the built-in additional doesn't come off, at least you potentially have a chance to additional again and actually get the second super off. So they do raise their defense twice. Or ideally, if you have dupes in, as I said, you can super attack 3 times in total, and then they can actually kind of defend somewhat pretty decently. But 55%, as I said, if that additional doesn't come off, if that super doesn't happen, their defense just isn't enough for the likes of red zone, and they really do get mollywopped compared to other units in the game. And as I said, it's just not quite good enough, and because I really do want to see how much damage they can take without an item, but that's going to be without type advantage, so I'm going to Icarus again. But we'll attack you nonetheless. I mean, the extra key they get is great in terms of getting their 18 key off consistently. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying they're bad. They're not bad. Their damage output is fantastic. It's one of the best in the game. Like, because after their morale boost, after their transformation happens, you have the guaranteed crit on 24 key. It means the amount of actual raw damage they are doing to a boss's health bar, to an enemy's health bar, is ridiculous. Like, you're talking 3-4 million crit, right? And if that additional comes off, that's even more damage on top of that, and also the potential chance to crit. And then if you have dupes, that's potential another super attack where your attacking defense has been raised twice already, where you could also do even more damage as a collective, and also even more damage, raw damage done, because you may crit again. So their damage output is fantastic. But as I said, their defense, as a standard of what we're used to, their defense isn't good enough. Like, the 40% damage reduction for 3 turns is nice, even with 150 attack and defense, like, it's good. And, raising their attack and defense once is also good, but as I said, I've seen them on the first phase of a Mega Shenron be clapped for 300k on a super, with the 40% damage reduction and 1 super. The 1 super, the 30% is just not enough. Which, as I said, they're just not reliant enough, because you have to rely on RNG happening so that additional super comes off, so you can raise their attack and defense twice. As I've said so many times since they've dropped, in the showcase anyway at least, if only one of the 18 keys, instead of raising the attack and defense by 30%, you greatly raise the attack and defense instead. Literally, that would help so much. I know it's only 20%, but that would make a huge difference, especially when you consider the fact, again, that additional is guaranteed, and then a 50% chance of launching additional means they could raise their attack and defense by 30% on top of the 50%, so they are actually defensively solid for that turn. Kind of like a B-Tech version of the Year 7s. I know they massively raise attack and defense, but the reason why they can become so defensively good that turn is, especially when you take Gogeta, who's very similar. You get a few rainbow keys for this, that's damage reduction. You hit the 18 key, massive raise attack and defense. Then you also get the additional to greatly raise attack and defense as well, and then if you have a dupe in, you greatly raise your attack and defense again. Same with Cooler popping off of all his 12 keys, because you're greatly raising your defense so much. So at least in this case, there won't be as many supers, but at least at 55%, you greatly raise your attack and defense once, the built-in additional comes off. If you do actually get, we might as well pop that, just see if we're going to be supered. You get the additional come off, which is very likely, because again, it's built in, and there is a high chance, a coin flip chance, for you to get the additional super, or for it to become a super. You would have raised your attack and defense by 80% in that turn. More importantly, the defense would have been raised that much, which means they would defend really, really well. Now, as I said, they wouldn't even need to do that on both. Like, it would be nice if it was on both. If they just done that on the post morale boost version of them, that still would have been enough. But on both of them, it would have been great. It would have been fantastic. They would have defended, really well on both pre and post transformation. Even on one of them, it would be so much better than the scenario they're in now. But as I said, the main thing they got going for them is their damage output. As I said, the amount of raw damage they can do to an enemy is fantastic, especially with the built-in crit at 24 key and the built-in additional. And of course, that gets even better with any dupes you may get, just because you're doing even more damage as a collective. But defensively, they're just not up to par. They're just not up to par. The only times they are, as I said, is if you're lucky enough and you have to rely on RNG, kind of like Nameku's guard. The only time they're good in the hardest content in the game like Red Zone is if RNG is in your favor and that additional super happens. If it doesn't, they just take far too much damage. Now let me pop this to make sure we have enough health for Birdcoo next turn. Thankfully for the Goku and Vegeta, they do have type advantage on this phase. Let me... Do you know, I'm going to stun you, that way Super Vegeta doesn't even get attacked, and then we'll just carry on attacking you. Yeah, why not? I'll give you all the orbs. You should be able to do a decent amount of damage, especially if all the additionals become supers. So that's kind of my conclusion with them. You know, as I said, while I haven't actually been able to do a video against the Mega Shenron in Red Zone, that I can actually show you where they actually kind of contribute and actually do something. And I said, like, the last run I did, which is, depending on when you've seen this, you've either already seen it, which is Birdcoo versus a Mega Shenron, which I didn't even realize I hadn't done yet, or it's going to come after this. It was actually meant to be them versus a Mega Shenron, but they kind of got locked off and didn't come back till like the very end. And then, yeah, even though I beat it and they were there, they didn't really do anything. So I kind of thought, you know, that's not really a fair showcase to them. But prior to that, when they've actually not been locked off and they've actually kind of remained on rotation, they're out there getting their cheeks clapped and absolutely jiggled and folded. So, yeah, it's a little bit frustrating because they can be good, but it's not consistent enough for how hard Red Zone hits. I said, if that additional doesn't happen, if that additional super does not happen, they just take far too much damage. Do you know, if there wasn't so many attacks in slot 1, like I know we have the guard, but if there wasn't so many attacks in slot 1, and then a plethora of them being type disadvantage against... type advantage against Birdcoo, I probably wouldn't use an item here. But I am going to. But I mean, at least so far in ESBR, which would actually been kind of criminal if they weren't somewhat decent in ESBR. But at least in ESBR they're doing well, but as I said, it would have been criminal if they didn't. And we haven't even got the morale boost off yet, because we haven't had them be hit 7 times. Because of where the attack placement has been always being in slot 1 for the majority, which, to be fair, it would have been nice to get it off, because at least they have, after turn 3, that permanent 30% damage reduction rather than 20. And the extra key +2 per type keys for retain instead of 1. But for the most part, they pretty much do the exact same thing pre and post transformation or pre and post morale boost. So in terms of actually getting it off, I'm not that concerned, but it would have been nice to have the extra damage reduction to let them take hits. But for the most part, everyone's just been attacking Birdcoo, which is kind of a bit more ideal considering how much damage these two could probably potentially take with no item on. And if they don't get that additional super off. Obviously, they're going to tank a lot better here because ESBR, while the newer ESBR stages from like Pure Saiyan or whichever one before that is onward, while ESBR does quite a bit of damage these days, obviously it's just nowhere near the level with Red Zone. But, I mean, you know, they have to be good somewhere, right? They have to be good somewhere, and at least in the likes of ESBR, while it is upscaling the difficulty, it is doing more damage, it's a little bit more difficult compared to what it used to be. At least, as I said, they are good somewhere, which, I mean, you kind of expect them to be. But at least also, you don't have to fully rely on the RNG of hitting the additional here, because otherwise that would be so annoying. Like, I mean, to be fair, if that was the case and they weren't performing that well here, I think generally people would consider them as being bad, which, I mean, rightfully so. But I don't think they're bad. As much as, like, I wouldn't even say qualms, because they're not individual qualms. It's kind of all one thing tied into each other. But as big as a qualm as I have with them, they're not a bad unit. They're still good. As I said, the actual damage they do is fantastic. Linking them is so easy. I still wish they gave them more, like, attack and defense links, but still... Linking them is so easy. They have a great rotation with the likes of Birdcoo, who can chill in slot 1, stack it and have guard and a revive, while them two out just doing crazy amounts of damage, even at 55%. It's just their defense just isn't up to par. Like, I don't need them to have guard. I don't need them to tank everything for nothing. But it needs to be much better than it actually is. But unfortunately, that's not the case. But I mean, there we go. That ESBR run was kind of a breeze. They done really well there. They didn't really have to take too many attacks, so we couldn't get the boost off. But in terms of how much damage they were doing, I said because of the built-in crit. In fact, they weren't even getting the built-in crit because they didn't get the morale boost. So they had a 30% chance to crit. But even so, the amount of damage they do, especially with the additional coming off, is great. And even better when you do get the crit actually come off as well. But they do really well with Birdcoo next to them. It's just a shame that that can't also translate into Red Zone because they don't raise their defense enough. But do let me know what you think down in the comments. Don't forget to drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video, guys. Peace.